The quarterfinals are set in the Women's Rugby World Cup. 3 more men's teams have qualified for the 2027 World Cup in Australia. We have a new Ranfurly Shield champion in New Zealand once again. And the Pacific Nations Cup has set its semi-finalists. Hello and welcome to the Rugby Roundup, September 10th, 2025. It's me, Big Mike, here at Big Mike Sports. Now let's talk some rugby. Also on this week's episode, we will be looking at the latest results in the Rugby Championship and what they mean going forward for the final 3 games. Super Rugby Australia kicks off this week, and we have our finals in the Currie Cup to look forward to. But enough of all that, let's get to the roundup. We are going to start with women's international rugby. And that means talking about the beautiful Women's Rugby World Cup being held in England. It was the final round of pool play last weekend, and we have our quarterfinalists set. In Pool A, the USA needed a miraculous 135-point turnaround with Australia and the points differential to make the quarterfinals. They started this by winning their game against Samoa 60-0, looking very good, very comprehensive after their draw against Australia in round 2. Unfortunately, their huge opening round loss to England proved too big, as England downed Australia 47-7, meaning that Australia qualifies on points difference by 35 points. This is a big victory for Australia, who not too long ago may not have been too sure if they would have been able to make it to the quarterfinals. But who would they meet? The winners of Pool B, which was decided when Canada took on Scotland, and Canada took this one out 40 points to 19, once again with a great forward pack in play, looking very clinical from the front. That gives Canada 3 wins from 3, just like England. In the other game in Pool B, this one was for bragging rights and for final placements. It was Wales versus Fiji. Wales scored more tries in this one. It was 5 tries to 4. At halftime, the score was 28-15 to Fiji. They did not score any points in the second half, but did get all their conversions in the first. Wales did score 5 tries, but didn't get a single conversion. Fiji holding on to win this one 28-25, getting a win in their second consecutive Rugby World Cup. In Pool C, for bragging rights, it was Japan taking on Spain. Japan proving to be more clinical, more trained, and looked smarter and more disciplined on the field. They won this one 29-21. In the other game, it was New Zealand versus Ireland for top spot. New Zealand looking for a bit of revenge, and they got it, winning 40 points to 0. Ireland have not looked as good as they would have hoped so far in this World Cup. They come second, New Zealand finished first. Another team after England and Canada with maximum points. Finally, in Pool D, to decide third place, Italy defeated Brazil 64-3. Great showing here from Italy, but unfortunately due to their loss to South Africa last week, they finished third. And speaking of South Africa, they went down 57 points to 10 to France. France topping this pool with 14 points, missing out on their bonus point against Italy in their first game. South Africa have qualified for the quarterfinals. Now to international men's results from last week. Let's start in Townsville. It was Australia versus Argentina. Argentina dominated this one in the first half, getting out to a 21-7 lead. At the 77th minute, Argentina got a penalty goal, giving them the lead 24-21. Australia were on the hunt, and they got 3 penalties after the 80-minute mark. Instead of going for the draw, which they could have easily taken, Australia kept going for it, showing a fight and a determination that the Wallabies have not shown in years. Finally, in the 86th minute, Angus Bell got over with a beautiful flick pass from Len Ikitau. This one was 28-24 to the Wallabies. So many Australian rugby fans are excited. The following game this weekend at Allianz Stadium has now sold out. There is a lot of hope here in Australia for the Wallabies to potentially take this competition, or even to run it up against the All Blacks and to maybe contest the Bledisloe properly. Argentina very disappointed after this one. They had the big lead, but they went down big in the second half. This was Australia's second big comeback victory so far in the Rugby Championship. In the other game, it was New Zealand versus South Africa at Eden Park. This was the big one that everyone was looking forward to. New Zealand got out to a great lead early on with 2 tries and finished winning this one 24-17. South Africa just could not compete when New Zealand flicked that switch, and they were able to defend and hold their spot. Great victory from the All Blacks here, which leaves them at halfway in the Rugby Championship on top of the table with 10 points. Australia behind them on 9, South Africa and Argentina sitting on 5 points. Both of these games are replayed this week, and Argentina and South Africa will both be hoping for victories because a loss could potentially leave them out of the hunt going forward in the Rugby Championship. In the Pacific Nations Cup, both Tonga and Canada had the week off and were hoping for results to go their way. First in Pool A, it was Fiji taking on Samoa, this one in Rotorua in New Zealand, as Samoa don't host games anymore because their rugby union is shit. Previously, Tonga had defeated Samoa and Fiji had defeated Tonga. So, Samoa started out big, got to an early lead in the first half, but eventually went down to those flying Fijians. This one finished 29-15. Fiji topping the pool, Tonga qualifying for the semifinals in the Pacific Nations Cup, unlike last year, and Samoa dropping down. This means that Tonga have qualified for the Rugby World Cup. In the other pool, Canada, very similar to Tonga, had already defeated the USA but lost to Japan. They needed Japan to defeat the USA, which they did 47-21. Japan topping the pool, Canada coming second, qualifying for the semi-finals, and the Rugby World Cup. The USA have finished third. What this means is this weekend it is Samoa versus the USA. The winner qualifies for the World Cup. The loser takes on the team that lost the South America qualifying final, which is Chile. So after a 12-point loss last week to Uruguay, Chile did defeat them the week after 21-18. However, Uruguay ended up winning this one on aggregate 46-37 and booking their ticket to Australia in 2027. It will be Chile taking on the loser of Samoa and the USA, with the winner qualifying and the loser dropping down to that last chance playoff tournament, joining Belgium, Namibia, and the eventual winner of the South America third place playoff between Brazil and Paraguay, which will happen next month. Now let's head to the world of club rugby, starting with the top 14 in round 1. Brand new team to the top 14 this year, Montauban started the season with a 47-24 loss to Stade Francais. Bayonne defeated Perpignan 26-19. Po held on to defeat returning to form Castries, who could not quite get there. This one was 17-15. Lyon defeated Racine 92-32-7, leaving Racine at the bottom of the table where they might stay for a while. Last year's third-place squad Toulon took down Montpellier 27-17. Defeated finalists Bordeaux went up against La Rochelle, the great rivals of French rugby, and took them down 23-18. And in the final game of the week, Clermont went down to Toulouse, the defending champs, 34-24. After a week of top 14 rugby, your top 6 is Lyon, Stade Francais, Toulouse, Toulon, Bayonne, and Bordeaux. Nearly the same 6 teams as last season. Now to D2 in France. My beloved Vannes got a great victory, 28-9 over Soyo Angoulême. Colomiers beat Biarritz 44-10. Carcassonne took down Oyonnax 19-17. Béziers beat Nevers 49-12. Grenoble beating Aurillac 38-16. Valence Romans took down Provence 33-30. Biggest win of the week, Stade Montois went down to again 53-7. Brive beat Dax 23-8. After 2 weeks, only 3 teams are undefeated. These teams are Colomiers, Grenoble, and Valence Romans. Now to New Zealand's NPC. 2 of the Auckland-based squads have had victories finally. Auckland, big upset win over the Tasman Mako, 29-21. And Counties took down North Harbour 22-19. That leaves North Harbour bottom of the table with no victories. Other results from the weekend. Otago continue their impressive season. 29-10 over Northland. They now sit in second place. Hawke's Bay beat the defending champions Wellington 45-19. Manawatu got a big victory over Waikato 36-26. Bay of Plenty got back into the top 4 with a 43-17 victory over Taranaki. And in the Ranfurly Shield, it changed hands again. It went from Taranaki to Waikato to Southland and now to Canterbury. After a 54-14 demolition job of Southland on the weekend, Canterbury sitting on top of the table undefeated. Top 8, Canterbury, Otago, Taranaki, Bay of Plenty, Hawke's Bay, Tasman, Manawatu, and Waikato. Those losses were very painful for Southland and Northland, who are just sitting behind them with Wellington. Auckland, a couple of victories, I reckon we could make the 8. In the Heartland Championship, only 2 teams remain undefeated. They are Mid-Canterbury and South Canterbury, which means that the 3 teams from Canterbury are 14-0. Bastards! Last round of Currie Cup pool play. This one saw the Sharks take down the Pumas 19-13, which meant that the Pumas missed out on the top 4. Western Province finally got their victory over the Boland Cavaliers. This one's 40-22. The Golden Lions took down the Griquas for top of the table placing 37-7. And the Blue Bulls beat the Free State Cheetahs 35-31. Now, how this one works is you have your 4 teams that feed into the URC squads, which are your Sharks, your Western Province going into the Stormers, the Golden Lions, and the Blue Bulls. They are joined in the Currie Cup by the top 4 teams in the South Africa Cup, which is made of the other 10 squads. Fun fact, in the Premier Currie Cup competition, only 1 of those URC teams have made the semi-finals, 3 of which are finished at the bottom of the table. Now, yes, they are missing a lot of Springboks players. Top 4 going into the semis, we have the Golden Lions on top, followed by the Griquas, the Free State Cheetahs, and the newbies this year, the Boland Cavaliers. So next year, your bottom 3 teams will still be there as your URC squads, and they'll just be joined by the next 4 best. 2 women's club rugby now. We've got the Farah Palmer Cup. In the Premiership, Auckland defeated Hawke's Bay 81-5, Waikato defeated Bay of Plenty 88-5, and Manawatu defeated Counties Manukau 40-26. Manawatu are sitting on top of the table but have played 1 more game than Waikato, Auckland and Canterbury, who follow them. It was the last round of the championship, the lower division, before the semi-finals. Northland defeated Wellington 22-13. Otago took down Taranaki 77-12. And North Harbour beat Tasman 42-22. Semi-finals for this week, Otago versus North Harbour and Northland versus Wellington, which was the game that we just had. So the teams might not even go home. And you know what? That's it for what happened last week. Now just a quick bit about me. Get my name out there. Big Mike here at Big Mike Sports. Best way to talk to us if you want me to talk about any games, any teams, any competitions. Reach out at Big Mike Sports NZ, Instagram, X, the YouTube, or comment under the Spotify. Keep on keeping on. No big news from this week, I think. So let's look forward to this upcoming week in rugby. We are going to start with international women's action, of course, as it is World Cup time, and our quarterfinals. First quarterfinal is New Zealand versus South Africa. Fun fact about this one, New Zealand have never lost to South Africa. They will face the winner of the second quarterfinal, which sees Canada taking on Australia, where Canada has never lost to Australia. Third quarterfinal, we have France versus Ireland. France have won 8 in a row versus Ireland. These teams have played each other 30 times and Ireland have only won 3. France are doing well in the competition so far, but probably not as well as they would have liked to. So this will be their way of being able to show what they've got before a big potential semi-final contest. With the winner of this one, the final quarterfinal, we see the old rivalry. It is England taking on Scotland. Now, Scotland's last victory against England was in 1999. It is very likely that the top 4 teams in the world, being England, Canada, New Zealand and France, are the teams that qualify for the semi-finals, just as they did last time round. Will we see an upset? Maybe Scotland over England, maybe Ireland over France, maybe Australia over Canada. Not very likely South Africa over New Zealand. 2 international men's games coming up. We've got the next round in the Rugby Championship. The return match from last weekend. It is Australia hosting Argentina in Sydney. Australia will want a big victory in this one as their last 2 games are against the old foe New Zealand. Argentina will still feel like they've got a chance to take out the Rugby Championship, but need a victory in this one. Otherwise, they go 2 losses behind and then have to travel to South Africa. In the other game, it is Wellington, it is New Zealand versus South Africa. Same story as Australia and Argentina. South Africa need the victory in this one, or else the Rugby Championship might be slipping out of their hands. The last time South Africa beat New Zealand in New Zealand was in Wellington. Both teams have a few injuries, as do Australia, as do Argentina. In the Pacific Nations Cup, we have our semi-finals. Tonga take on Japan and Fiji take on Canada. All of these games are taking place in Colorado in the United States of America. And speaking of the US, they will be the hosts of the 2031 World Cup. They have just been granted $250 million from World Rugby to strengthen their game, which might be a little too late as all of these Major League Rugby clubs are folding. They will be taking on Samoa this weekend, and as I mentioned earlier, the winner of this one will qualify for the World Cup. The loser still has a bit of work to do. Before the Pacific Nations Cup, many were tipping this game to be Tonga versus Canada, as it was last year. So these two teams will be desperate for a big win in this one. In the 2023 World Cup, the USA did not qualify. Samoa did, and got one victory, which was over Chile, which could be important. Okay, let's go to club rugby now, starting with men's games coming up this weekend in the top 14. Now, Lyon, who started out with that huge victory, are away from home against Montauban. Bayonne host Montpellier. Pau take on Stade Francais, a battle of two teams who are undefeated. La Rochelle and Clermont are both looking for their first victory of the year. Can the defending champs stay undefeated when they host Perpignan? It is Toulon versus Castries. And in the final game, Racing 92 host Bordeaux. Can Racing get their first victory of the season against last year's European champions? In D2, our games this weekend. Undefeated Grenoble is away from home against, again, top of the table Colomiers is away from home against Oyonnax. And the other undefeated team, Valence Romans, are away from home against Brive. We've also got Provence versus Biarritz. Soyo Angolini versus Dax. Aurillac taking on Béziers. Nevers taking on Carcassonne. And Stade Montois hosting Vannes. Now, the Premiership does not kick off until 2 weekends' time, but we do have the start of the Premiership Rugby Cup. This has got the 10 teams of the Premiership in 2 pools of 5. Last year's champions were Bath. Typically, this takes place in the international window. However, it's not the international window, so it'll be interesting to see what sides these teams put up. Now, a reminder, Newcastle has been rebranded as they've been purchased by Red Bull. They are no longer the Newcastle Falcons. They are Newcastle Red Bull. Let's have a quick look at the 10 teams and players in and players out for the season. Defending champions Bath are bringing in Argentinian big man. And by big man, I mean, fly half big man. Santiago Carreras. Bristol bringing in NFL failure, Luis Zamit, and have a back rower from Black Lion in Georgia as Luka Ivanishvili joins the Bristol Bears. Exeter have made a couple of big Australian signings as they are bringing in Wallabies, Tom Hooper and Len Ikitau. Gloucester have a lot of names coming in and a lot of names leaving. One of those names leaving is Santiago Carreras, who is going to Bath, as I mentioned earlier. Coming into the squad, biggest name from the Southern Hemisphere looks like 33-year-old former All Black prop Nepo Laulala. Harlequins are signing 3 Argentinian players, 2 from Dogos XV. Leicester's big signing this year is Wallaby. James O'Connor, who had that amazing season at the Crusaders and is now leading his international squad so beautifully. Players out for the Leicester Tigers, we're looking at guys like Ben Youngs, who are retired, Ben Volavola and Andre Pollard, 2 fly halves, and Argentinian captain Julian Montoya, who is headed to France. And of course, Dan Cole. Lots of players in and out of Newcastle as well. Let's see what they can do from the bottom of the table. They have Simon Benitez Cruz, the scrum half from Tarucas from Argentina, as well as the back rower from the Crusaders, Tom Christie, coming in. Northampton's players in. They have an Italian, a Zimbabwean, a South African, 2 English and a French. The Saleh Sharks, Springboks, Jacques Vermeulen and Marius Lowe join the Sharks. Saracens, The big name that is on everybody's lips coming in to Saracens this season is the return of the man himself from Racing 92, Owen Farrell. And our games this weekend, we have Gloucester versus Exeter, Newcastle taking on Harlequins, Leicester versus Saracens, and the Saleh Sharks versus the Bristol Bears. NPC action in New Zealand. I know the rugby just keeps on coming. Northland hosting Wellington, potentially. The loser of this one will be very far away from that top 8. Waikato looking to regain some momentum against the hapless North Harbour. Bay of Plenty are hosting Hawke's Bay. This is 4th versus 5th. Otago versus Taranaki. This is 2nd versus 3rd. Who would have picked that? We've got Auckland hosting Manawatu. Manawatu had that big victory over Waikato, doing well at 3 wins from 6. Auckland will be looking to regain that momentum, potentially make a late charge to the 8. Southland, after their big Ranfurly Shield loss last week, host the Counties Monaco Steelers. And in the final game of the weekend, it is a Ranfurly Shield defence for a 4th week in a row. This one sees Canterbury taking on the Tasman Markle. Now to Australia. It is the start of Super Rugby Australia this week. This is a 4-team round-robin competition, followed by a grand final. It is the 4 Australian Super Rugby teams playing without their Wallabies. However, there are Wallabies in each squad who just don't happen to be in the Rugby Championship squad. First game of the week, we've got the Waratahs versus the Force. This one's at Rat Park, Pittwater Park, the home of the Warringah Rats in the Shute Shield. New South Wales is captained by 31 Test Wallaby Matt Phillip returning to Australia. The Western Force are captained by Darcy Swain, a big lock who hasn't been able to break back into the Wallabies squad. Interestingly as well, Kurtley Beale sits on the bench for the Force. The second game of the week is the big one. It is the Reds versus the Brumbies. This one is at Ballymore, the home of rugby in Queensland. The Reds, obviously coached by Les Kiss, who will be taking over for the Wallabies. The Brumbies are coached by Stephen Larkham. The Reds captain is Jock Campbell. They've also got Sarah Uru, Tom Robinson, Tim Ryan, Kalani Thomas, all their superstars that aren't quite in the Wallabies. The Brumbies captain is Luke Reimer, and the superstar from that First Nations and Pacifica squad, Jara McLeod, gets a start in the centres for the Brumbies. Most are picking that these are the 2 teams that will contest the final. Great competition. Gives us a little bit of the difference. It gives us a next level from club rugby between Super Rugby and club, which means that players aren't going from playing in the Shute Shield straight into a Super Rugby match against the Crusaders. There are 3 games here plus a final. All of these players get to build a bit of momentum, have a bit of fun, and also show the Wallabies that they are still there just in case there are injuries going into these big Bledisloe Cup weekends coming up at the end of the month. Now, the URC is not back for a couple of weeks, so what do we do in the meantime? Well, South Africa's Currie Cup Premier Division has its semi-finals. First game is going to be Griquas taking on the Free State Cheetahs. Now, in round 6, the Griquas won this one 40-10. The other game, top of the table, Golden Lions host the Boland Cavaliers. Wouldn't it be amazing for the Cavs to make it to the final? In round 3, Boland won this one 29-10. Now to Women's Club Rugby, we have the Farah Palmer Cup in New Zealand. It is the Championship semi-finals. As I mentioned earlier, we have Northland Coldy taking on the Wellington Pride. In the top of the table, undefeated Otago Spirit looking to absolutely demolish the North Harbour Hibiscus. 2 rounds left in the Premiership. This weekend sees the Auckland Storm hosting Canterbury. This one's 3rd versus 4th. We've got the Bay of Plenty Volcanics versus the Hawke's Bay Tui. These are the 2 teams who have not had a win. Who's going to leave the competition with one? Hopefully this one doesn't end in a draw. After 4 games each, Bay of Plenty's points differential is minus 259. Hawke's Bay's is minus 267. In the other game, which is the top of the table clash, we have Waikato hosting Manawatu. And that is it for the rugby coming up. No faffing around, just half an hour of beautiful rugby news and beautiful things to look forward to. But before we go, let's talk about Big Mike's Big 3 games. If you've only got time to watch one, see one, follow one, whatever, hey, maybe make sure it's one of these guys. I've got some honourable mentions this week for the Big 3. We've got that second game in Wellington, New Zealand versus South Africa, the All Blacks taking on the Springboks. The Springboks need a win in this one to keep their Rugby Championship chances alive. Another honourable mention, France versus Ireland, the quarterfinal at the Rugby World Cup. This, in my mind, will likely be the closest game of all the quarterfinals. And we've also got round 1 action, Super Rugby Australia, Reds versus Brumbies. Now to the Big 3 games. First, we've got the Ranfurly Shield defence from Canterbury. They're the new Ranfurly Shield holders. They're top of the table. They are undefeated. They are taking on their Crusaders neighbours, Tasman. This is 1st versus 6th, and we could be looking at the 4th week in a row with a Ranfurly Shield change. Then in the Rugby Championship, we have Australia hosting Argentina. Can the Wallabies do it again? Can the Pumas bounce back and get a big victory like they did in the second game against the All Blacks? This one's in Sydney. It is sold out. Argentina have won 4 of the last 6 against the Wallabies. They are looking for revenge and to stay in the competition. And our final game in our Big 3, it's quite simple. It is Samoa versus the USA. It is in Colorado. It is for the Pacific Nations Cup 5th place spot, but it is also for a spot in the Rugby World Cup in 2027. That's enough for me. That's a lot of rugby. And I'm going to watch as much of it as I can. Best thing about having a newborn, they're up in the middle of the night. You can watch these overseas games. Anyway, from all of us here at Big Mike Sports, have a beautiful week and watch some beautiful rugby.